got to make this more fun of me because I respected me so much. Well, another holiday is upon us, and another chance to look at the worst, and yes, that's what brings us here. I know, some of you are already unhappy about that. Feel that it's unfair, especially when compared to some other films in the first 10. One thing I've learned when it comes to Trek fans, there's a vast difference between the opinion of the mainstream. For the mainstream, odd numbers suck, plus numbers because they even bother saying it. But among people who like Trek, there are no rules. Everything will be defended by somebody somewhere as being better than what others are saying, or worse. I'll admit this one here is part of what has affected me at high in the last place, to the point where which is worse is, well, probably the one I've seen most recently, and Pain and the Precious. But since a three-way tie is too much, I have bonus points to two of the films for their own special contributions. This one had two strong points against it. Had it not been for the 25th anniversary of Star Trek 2 years later, this likely would have killed the film franchise. Also, the film's failure is so well known that even those who aren't really science fiction fans still know about it. So with those bonus points of infamy, plus another I'll mention later, this one gets to have the Christmas slot. And that's just my call. That's why it's opinion in the title. I don't want you to feel you have to conform to what I say is entertainment any more than what Hollywood tells you is entertainment. Personal taste is one of the few areas where there is room to be an individual in our modern world. But then, there's nothing wrong with agreeing with others that dog shit isn't very tasty either. Let's get this out of the way soon. There is nothing you can say in this film's defense that I don't already know. I know about the budget issues. I know about the effects issues. I know there was a Teamster strike. Yes, I did read Shatner's movie memoirs book, and the one about this film itself that his daughter did. Yes, I watched the special features and the commentary. Unless you actually are William Shatner, there's pretty much nothing new to add. And it all boils down to the same thing. For whatever reason, this movie sucks. The problem is, it still sucks. If hearing that makes you uncomfortable, you may want to leave now. One thing people bring up to defend this film is the fact that it was ambitious, but undermined by the studios. To that I answer again, I don't care. It doesn't make it any less awful, and a lot of that awfulness still falls directly on Shatner's shoulders. Because he knew what was going on when he went in. He convinced them that he could make this work. And that's the point to remember. It wasn't that everything was in place and they mucked it up. He wanted to do something, they said what they actually wanted, and he sold them on the idea that he could do his story their way. He wanted to do a story about Kirk seeking out God, a tale of adventure in search of higher meaning, a story that even Gene Roddenberry told him wouldn't work because he already tried it. The studio told them they wanted comedy like the last film has, since it had done so well. This kind of thing happens out there, and it sucks. But that doesn't make a movie any less stupid if you go along with it. If you say, I want to make a movie about the Holocaust, and the studio says, we want our next picture to be a musical comedy. Are you actually going to keep your idea? Are you really going to do a musical comedy about the Holocaust when it obviously combines two things that don't go together? And please stop saying Springtime for Hitler. There's a difference between finding comedy in an evil dictator and finding comedy in a death camp. Same with this. You cannot combine a film about higher meaning and purpose with broad comedy. It doesn't work. Not unless you are a real genius at writing and directing. And this was Shatner's first film as a director. His previous work had just been doing some episodes of his talk show, T.J. Hooker. Even our previous film, which is something potentially very dark, facing like criminal charges for their actions, got around that by changing the setting so those issues were thrown out of the way. They can't do that if that is your central theme. And yeah, it sucks that you can't do the film you want. But what's the alternative? What do you do when the parameters are so at odds with what you're trying to achieve? Well, if you're William Shatner, you're out there in the studio, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I've had one wish, it's the elsewhere. A second serious mistake was that Shatner had his plot fixated upon the awesomeness of his character. While Star Trek has focused primarily on Kirk, Shatner has taken things much further, to the point where the only way to raise himself up further is to push other characters down. And that does the film, which is already struggling, even further disservice. We'll see these as the film goes on, and they're pretty glaring. But this film is such a misstep all around that you can pick it up and remove it from the franchise without consequence. Moving from 4 to 6.5 still flows naturally. In fact, it arguably works better to ignore it altogether, since 6 carries on the themes of the previous trilogy, and it removes a number of things that contradict established Trek lore and/or common sense. Bringing in David Lowery was the third big mistake. Lowery's listed credit before this was the 1984 piece Dreamscape, which was successful, and the film Lowery wanted to despise it. The rest of his work reads like a slow descent into film hell. Passenger 57, Tom and Huck, Money Train, Obsessed. Movies' descriptions would include either bomb, panned by critics, or mindless. And none of those words are your friend when making a metaphysical epic in a successful science fiction franchise. Ironically, Shatner had strong reservations about Lowery, but it was Dreamscape that had changed his mind. Again, the film it is that Lowery hated. For some strange reason, it seemed like Star Trek 5 and the film the University's 5. They wanted Ireland to do the effects, they were making movie 3. They wanted Sean Connery to be Cybok, he was also doing movie 3. They wanted Nick Meyer to write the script, he was working elsewhere. They needed Spock to be in it, and Nimoy was working elsewhere too. Then it was supposed to shoot, obviously, because it couldn't be done without Spock. But in the meantime, it seemed kind of like Shatner declared, everyone will get a chance to see how Kirk defeats God. And God said, oh, we'll see about that, Bill. Shatner laments the changes that came to his movie, and is the reason some feel it isn't fair. While we always sympathize with someone aspiring high and being thwarted by circumstance, a lot of it also shows the original was no real improvement. For instance, the plot of the film was to be that they would go to meet God and instead find the devil. You might say, well, isn't that what actually happened? That's what I thought too. This creature that claims to be God is, in fact, it took quite a while for the point to really sink in with me, because, quite frankly, it was so bizarre. You see, the devil was literal, the actual devil. And as bad as you might have felt about Indiana Jones doing science fiction, imagine how Star Trek would handle doing the supernatural. Star Trek Twilight did one. Likewise, a lot of the stuff about the movie not matching the one in his head is stuff that would have done little to help. For instance, they also cut another shot of them in the camp that was also going to be ridiculously expensive. A lot of the stuff implemented would have no doubt added a little bit of an artistic look to it. Well, to a couple of moments in the film, actually. But by no means don't the picture where their assets, nor would they have overcome the specific promise of the story itself. This never changed the argument too soon regarding the interaction of the three main characters. But the point is, none of these changes did anything to make a great movie fail. The ones that came about by budget and circumstance have likewise not destroyed the film. They certainly help contribute to the problem, but that goes back to two important issues. First, the lack of money for the important stuff can be readily seen in areas where it wasn't needed. For instance, triple-breasted cat dancer. Your film doesn't turn on the existence of triple-breasted cat dancers. So if you're short on money, spend it when you see the actual deficiency in your overall story. Because people will not walk away talking about her. They'll be talking about what your film was supposed to be about. Now let's not forget that Star Trek V was second only to TNT as far as budget went. It had more budgeted than Star Trek 2 and 3 put together. So there's no real excuse there either. Second, if your story and your script cannot achieve what you want without the visual effects, then fix that. Because simply saying, this was my vision, will not magically make it appear on screen. One of Spielberg's most memorable films, Jaws, wraps up the suspense by building around that point, that the budget couldn't support seeing the shark in its full glory like he wanted. So the story was changed to turn that problem to a way of complementing the story. And remember, that was only Spielberg's second theatrical film.